What's up everyone, it's Taylor and I'm here in my empty apartment. I'm on isolation until April 1st. Just got back to Canada a little while ago. And I've been doing a lot of thinking, as I'm sure all of you have, about this whole COVID-19 business. And I was thinking about, the stages that I've been going through. And the first one, of course, was fear, as everybody else. I'm fearful about what's happening, what's going to happen, and the potential future that we all are going to experience. I've also been thinking about some of the lessons that I've learned in my own life, what this has brought to life for me as far as the values that I have, the values that I've been putting off to the side because of life in general. And now they're becoming front and center for me because I have an opportunity to think about them, not only because I'm by myself, but because I'm able to contrast them against the current state of affairs. And the third thing I've been thinking about is the opportunity that we all have in front of us, from the individual level to the nation level to the global level. So I wanted to share 3 fears, 3 lessons, and 3 opportunities. So like many of you, I'm sure, my number 1 fear is for my family. Specifically the older people in my family. And my mom, in most particular, because she has an underlying lung issue. She has COPD. And this, as everybody knows, is a disease that people in their younger years or people in their 20s, 30s, and even 40s, they're not going to experience much issue more than likely. It'll be similar to the flu, they'll get some congestion, but it's not going to be life-threatening. But the older a person gets, and especially if those people have pre-existing conditions, the more impactful this disease is going to be for that person. And my mom fits perfectly into that demographic. So I'm very worried about her. And I've been thinking about this a lot. My dad too, he's older as well. He's in his 70s. And this is a disease that is not kind to people who are older. And it's definitely not kind to people who are older and who have pre-existing conditions. So that's my number 1 fear. So my second fear is for the economic impact this is going to have. It's already having a crazy impact on the economy. People are being laid off. All the stock markets are down. People are losing their life savings. And this is having a real effect on the confidence of the US economy, the global economy. It's a scary time. It's a scary time if you've invested. It's a scary time if you haven't invested. It's a scary time if you own a business, if you work for somebody. Everybody across the board is feeling the economic impact that this is having. It's shutting down trade, it's shutting down travel, it's shutting down entire industries with no real clear end in sight. None of us really know how long we'll have to go about the way that we're doing things in order to see an appreciable impact in how we're treating and how we're being affected by this virus. The industries that are most impacted, things like air travel, like restaurants, like the tourism industry, it's discretionary spending. It's industries that rely on people having more money than they need to absolutely survive in order to spend that freely on their services. So vacations, that is money that if you don't have the money to eat, if you don't have the money to pay rent, if you don't have the money to pay your car payments, or put your kids in school, or put food on their plates, then you're definitely not going to go on a cruise or to Disneyland. Same with restaurants. You're not going to go out to restaurants to eat if you can't afford to fill your fridge with food that you will prepare at home. These are all economic impacts on people that is going to likely cause a lot of industries that rely on this discretionary spending to really, really feel it, and likely a lot of businesses are going to collapse because of it. And my third fear is actually for my own business. So that discretionary spending, I rely entirely on that. I'm a coach. And there's the nice to have and the need to have. Having a coach in your life, having someone to guide you through fitness and nutrition and really lay out a plan for you so that you can actually achieve results in 2, 3, 4 months, that's a nice to have. But if you don't have money to buy groceries or pay rent or pay your car, which a lot of people are thinking about right now, then that's definitely not a need to have. Having a coach is not a need to have. So my industry, all the coaches around the world, all the fitness professionals, I'm lucky because I work from my house. I'm in isolation and technically I can still work. But think about all the personal trainers out there who don't even have a gym that they can train their clients in right now. I'm gonna feel it, personal trainers are gonna feel it. That's the third fear I have, is for my business. What am I gonna be able to do in order to keep money coming in? So 3 lessons I've been thinking about. Now, every adversity has something to teach us. And this one is no different. There's a lot that we can learn on an individual level from this, as well as a global level. Now, the first thing that we can all learn from this is economic, right? Like a lot of people right now are scrambling, they're worried about finances, about their investments, about their mortgage. This is a really interesting moment that we're seeing because President Trump, he's been held up in high regard by Republicans and by not so much libertarians, but definitely closer to the libertarians. And this idea that government should never be involved in business, in free trade. But we're looking at 2008 all over again, but even further. We're looking at restaurant industry asking for a $130 billion bailout, the airline industry asking for a bailout as well. These are all private industries that are asking for government intervention in order for them to stay afloat. And I'm not saying either is right. I'm just saying that it's easy for us to say one thing, for us to say, this is the right way to do it. Libertarianism or socialism or capitalism is the right way to go about it. But when we see a stress test like we're seeing right now, we're seeing a lot of people's true colors show. And in this idea of government bailouts, this idea of a safety net for companies that are they necessary? Are they required? Are they something that are so important to us that we need to prop them up with government funding? The restaurant industry, if you took it from a surface value, say, the restaurants, you can let them close. We don't necessarily need restaurants to survive. Yeah, but what about all the people who work at the restaurants, right? What about their families? What about their families that rely on their income that they get from serving, or that they get from cooking, or that they get from running deliveries from the restaurant? These people are gonna lose their jobs, and that's gonna have a real economic impact. So the $130 billion, is it then worth it to consider? It's not about keeping restaurants in business so that they can continue to be profitable. It's about, do these people have jobs still that they can support themselves, support their family, and not require on government assistance in order to live and in order to get by? It seems like at either end of that decision, government intervention is going to be something that's implemented, right? It's either going to be the government directly supports the workers because they no longer have a job, or the government directly supports the businesses so that they can continue to pay those workers. I guess at the heart of this, the thing that's really come up for me as a lesson from the whole economic situation is we have this really interesting relationship with value. It's easy to look at a screen and look at the troughs, look at trends going up and trends going down. What does that mean for the economy? We're placing the value in that, in what we're seeing on a screen, in these lines going up and these lines going down. We're not placing the value in the companies themselves, the relationships that they have with the nation, the relationships that they have with their employees, those employees and their relationships with their community, their families. That's the real value of these companies. That's the real value of the stock market. You know, we can play it to our advantage. And if you buy maybe now and over the next few weeks, the next few months, you'll likely come out on top this time next year. But the value that we're purchasing isn't the lines on the graph. The value that we're purchasing is the economic impact that that's going to have on someone's life, someone's family, someone's community, their small city or their small town. That's what we're purchasing. That's the inherent value. So the second lesson is in our food systems. And I mean, it's never been more apparent that we have this backwards too. So I think the lesson to be learned here, whether we're talking about the wet markets and the horrendous conditions that the animals are finding themselves in, the high chance of contamination, the high chance of viral transmission from one species to another, or we're talking about the priorities when someone goes to the grocery store and hoards toilet paper and chips before they go grab some celery and carrots. I feel like there's a lesson here, which is we're disconnected from our food. We're completely disconnected from not only what that food is giving us in the way of nutrition, but also what it's taking from us and from the environment in order to get that food on our plate. I feel like there's a better relationship that we could all form around food. What I mean is our connection to where our food comes from and the impact that it has on our health and the impact that it has on the health of the planet that we share. Many of these beings that we're killing for food, we share that planet with. And the third thing that I took away from this is the tribalism that I'm seeing, or I guess you could just call it flat out racism. Technically, this virus originated in China, and this is definitely not the first time that we've seen a SARS virus from China or a virus jump species from these wet markets in China. We've seen it with SARS, we've seen it with now COVID-19, the bird flu. We all remember that one, MERS. It's China's fault. That's China's fault. They live like savages in these wet markets. And I'm definitely not condoning wet markets. I think they're horrendous, both for the animals and for the people. But what I will say is it's very easy to point the finger. Something had to happen. And it just so happens that it was COVID-19. But look at what we're doing in North America. We're in the West. Now we're pumping animals full of antibiotics and causing antibiotic resistance. Is that the next thing? A lot of people are saying that that's likely going to be the case, that we start getting these microbes in our system that start tearing us down, that we don't have any effective drugs against because we've been pumping animals through animal agriculture with antibiotics, and the low dose antibiotics have allowed bugs to gain resistance and then infect us, and we have no useful medication against them. So what if it was us, right? Then the whole world would be pointing the finger at us. And that's just one case. The other argument we could make is for just the long-term environmental impact all of this is having, right? That's no one in particular, that's all of us. That's climate change from pollution from factories, from transportation, massive pollution from animal agriculture. So while we're all pointing the finger at China, and again, I'm not saying that what's going on in the wet markets is by any stretch acceptable. I think that should be outlawed by the government if they can. What I am saying is that we feel the need to point the finger, right? And where the finger should really be pointed is back at us. Because if it wasn't COVID-19 from China, it would be antibiotic resistance drugs that maybe came from Calgary or somewhere in the United States. It's still a likely scenario. That's still probably coming down the pipeline. So this tribalism, this pointing, oh, it was them, we're impacted because of them. No, it's us, and we need to get our act together collectively. And that actually brings me to the opportunities. I'm actually very optimistic about this whole thing. I'm fearful, there's a lot of lessons, but I am very optimistic about the future. And one of the main things that I'm very optimistic about is you're seeing right now on a global scale, nations coming together, right? We're seeing nations coming together, working together. We're all battling this thing under one flag. And that's just that we're all humans and we're all susceptible to this, and we don't want to die. We don't want our loved ones to die. And we're rallying together in as peaceful a way possible to help mitigate this. Now, there's lines on the map saying that I'm Canadian and maybe you're from the United States, or maybe she's from India and he's from China. But we're really learning quickly that these are just lines on a map. It was just a few months ago that the very first cases started to arrive in China, or started to be made public in China. And here we are, the entire world is now at a breakneck pace, becoming infected by COVID-19, no end in sight, and all we can do is try to, as they say, flatten the curve. That's a matter of a few months. That's how connected we are as a global social system. A few plane trips here and there, a few interminglings here and there, and all of a sudden the entire world is contracting this virus. So we're learning we're a very small social system at this point. We're global and we all affect each other. My hope is that when this is all said and done, when we're exiting the pandemic and entering whatever the next stage is for us, that we remember this, that we are all interconnected, and that what happened in China could have as equally originated from the United States, could have happened in Europe, and we're going to start seeing everybody, whether they're across the Pacific or across the Atlantic, as family, as friends, as our neighbors, and what we do today impacts them tomorrow, and vice versa. So if we can start working together, which I think, like I say, I've always been an optimist, and I'm becoming more and more of an optimist as this goes on, I feel like this is a big leap that we can take to trusting one another, to working with one another, and really creating a future where the lines on the map, while they're still there, are really more just representation of these microeconomies and these micro-social systems that are part of a larger social system, a larger economy. And with the economy, I'm also very optimistic, as many others are. It's really looking bad right now. It's probably going to get a lot worse as a lot more people become unemployed, as a lot of people who might have been employed unfortunately have long recovery times or possibly even die. But it will bounce back again. Everything will move back up in the right direction. If you have money to invest right now, maybe not right now, and I'm definitely not the person to ask about this. I'm not an economist, I'm not an investor. But if you do talk to someone who has knowledge about this, then they'll likely say, now is a perfect time to start investing in companies that will be around in 10 years, and they've been around maybe for 30 years before, 50 years before. They're not going anywhere. They're part of the either national infrastructure or the global infrastructure, and they're on sale right now. I mean, this is a great time for people who might have never been able to get into the market to now get into the market and set themselves up for future gain. The other thing is that, look, a lot of holes have been pointed out in our system. We are on a global level seeing that, hey, there's a lot of things that need to be changed. And this is only going to drive ingenuity. Necessity is the mother of all ingenuity, as they say. And all these emerging industries, emerging companies are going to come out, and they're going to plug these holes. And maybe the holes were there to begin with, and we always knew they were there, but now we all have an emotional connection with why these holes should be plugged, and we're going to financially back them, either by buying their products or investing them either through federal investing or private investing. So there's gonna be a lot of emerging companies, a lot of emerging markets that we can start to look at and start investing in. Maybe that's even your company. Maybe you're thinking about something right now that will become the next big thing, which leads me to why I'm optimistic about myself, about other people who are maybe finding themselves in moments where they're not quite sure how their industry is going to be impacted by all this. Look, my industry basically did a 180 degree overnight or over the last week or so. And I likely won't be able to coach the same way that I did before. And while I would like to do that, I realized that what I would like and what the world is willing to give are two different things. So I'm going to need to adapt. And there's never been a better time to adapt because the entire world is forced into adaptation. And if you're self-employed, if you're in an industry that relied entirely on discretionary income, on discretionary spending, then it's scary. You don't know what the heck to do. But the thing is that there's so many opportunities out there. All you need to do is start putting your ear to the ground and taking a look at where are they arising. Now the thing is that people think they buy products. People think that they buy value. And on a surface level, that might be the case. But I want you to think about this. People don't buy products. People don't buy value. They buy transformation. So when people hired me as a coach, they weren't hiring me, they weren't buying a fitness program. They weren't buying a meal plan. Like, no one cares about a meal plan. No one cares about a fitness program. What they care about is a transformation from where they are today to where they are tomorrow. They don't enjoy the body they're in, the health that they have, the confidence that they don't have. They want to have a strong aesthetic body. They want to have confidence. They want to feel healthy and get their blood work done and say, hey, you know what? I've made this transformation and become the person that I wanted to become when I started this whole journey. What they're buying, that transformation, that's not going to change. The circumstances around that transformation are going to change. So while someone might not invest in their health transformation, maybe you can help them invest in their financial transformation or their security transformation or their job transformation. If you find yourself in a position where your job is basically evaporated overnight, your industry's evaporated overnight, I'm confident in myself that I can still provide value to some people in some way to help them with their transformation, whatever that transformation might be. And I'm confident that if you look deep into what makes you a human, what makes you valuable to people, what's the knowledge that you have, the inspiration that you can give, that you can help people with their transformation too. And that might be on a one-to-one basis. That might be working in some industry where you're helping people indirectly through their transformation. But just remember that people are always going to be purchasing transformation in one way, shape, or another. Just the circumstances around that transformation are going to change, and as they've changed right now. The second opportunity I see is environmental. So I feel like this coronavirus business has really highlighted just how fragile we are as a species, all our social systems, economic systems. And my hope is that once all this is done, we'll start to realize that we can't keep pushing things off to future generations. This virus has made a massive impact on all of our systems. The worst part about it is that we all knew it was coming. If you talk to experts, everybody knew it was coming. Listen, Bill Gates he's got a TED Talk on this thing from like 5 or 6 years ago. And we knew it was coming, but we all delayed it, right? We all put it off on future generations, just the same as we're doing right now with climate change. So my hope is that we will start to really sink in to our responsibility right now for us next year, in 5 years, our children in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years, and our grandchildren in 30 years. I hope that we start to really sink into that and realize that what we do today impacts directly what happens to our children and our grandchildren in the very near future. And that has everything to do with environmental change. So reducing our CO2 emissions, reducing our methane emissions from animal agriculture, and doing whatever we can to curtail the environmental impacts that we're having as a species right now. And the third thing that I'm highly optimistic about, I was already optimistic about it before this whole thing happened, and I feel like this is just a catalyst to even more rapid growth in the industry, is our food systems. So without a shadow of a doubt, it's not a good idea to have a whole bunch of domesticated animals in close confinement, pooing on each other, peeing on each other, and then slaughtering them in a street and having someone go and cook it in an hour or so. That's probably not the best idea. It's shown to proliferate viruses, help them jump from species to species. Here we are in this mess today. We also know that animal agriculture using low-dose antibiotic medication on their animals is setting us up for a future where by 2050, 10 million people a year will be dying from what we could have said were preventable bacterial infections. My hope is that we start to really look at the systems we have in place for our food. As we see store shelves being decimated and not being able to be restocked because of shipping from halfway across the nation or even halfway across the world, maybe we can start looking at food systems that are sustainable on more levels than one, not just because they're close in proximity to the places where they're sold, a farm being within 30, 50, 100 miles from the grocery store, but also in a sustainable sense where we're not looking at animal protein as a staple in our diet. Now, of course, I'm talking about a vegan diet here. I'm talking about creating a food system that's sustainable and morally aligned with 99% of the people that I've ever met. You know, just because someone's not vegan doesn't mean that they want to inflict as much harm on animals as possible. It just means that they don't know how to make decisions around food. They haven't been educated on food. And if you could tell someone, hey, listen, you can eat not only food that you find really tasty, but it's also going to be super healthy for you and help you live a long, healthy life and likely get off any medication that you're on. And it's also the most sustainable diet that you can be on. If you could show them that you can check all those boxes and hand hold them in order to do so, and I'm sure that most people would make that switch, especially on the other side of a pandemic like this, where we're realizing that our food choices, our food systems could lead to worldwide epidemics like the one that we're seeing right now. So I'm very optimistic that we're gonna start to make some serious shifts in our food systems, maybe even more local. We could start to set up agricultural infrastructure that's where vendors are getting their produce and their fruits and whatnot from 30, 50, 100 miles away. And it's just gonna be a much more sustainable, much more aligned system in the future. So all that to be said, I'm very optimistic about the future. I know it's a very long video, but hey, I'm in isolation for the next 12 days, so I have nothing but time. I hope all of you are doing well. My heart goes out to you if you're feeling alone, if you're feeling a little frustrated, if you're feeling worried about the future, which I know a lot of people are. We're gonna get through this, and it's hard now, but I feel like we're gonna have a more resilient global community and a more resilient local community when this is all said and done. Once we don't have to worry about hugging each other, maybe you can go out there, find your friends and your family that you haven't hugged enough, give them a big hug, and just remember that we're all gonna be okay in the long run. So thanks for watching. Maybe leave a comment. I'd love to know more about you, know more about your current situation, and some of the things that you're going to either do or look forward to in the future. All right, take care.